Good afternoon, my dear students. Here is Dr. Pramod Ambasra Pawar, Assistant Professor and Head, Department of English, Sant Dnyaneshwar Mahavidyalaya, Soigaon. I am teaching BA second year compulsory English. In this lecture, I am going to teach you one of the most important and interesting poems entitled as Father Returning Home. So, Father Returning Home is written by Dilip Chitre. The name is quite well known to all of you. And the poem is very interesting because it portrays a realistic picture of life. So let's see what the poem is all about, what is the deep concern of the poet, and how he wants the radical changes in the society through poetry. So let's focus our attention on the poem, Father Returning Home. So first of all, focus your attention on three words which have constituted the title, which is very meaningful and suggestive. Father, a father takes care of the whole family. Father is always responsible. His shoulder is, the responsibility is being shouldered upon him, and he has to simply, honestly, innocently executes the work assigned to him, maybe his office work, maybe the home responsibilities. So, but nobody cares for the concern of the father. There are hardly a few people that they pay attention to the sincerity and honesty of the father. Much more attention is given to the mother. Actually, how mother is the best, but father is also equally the best. So that is the main concern. So let's see what the poem means to the poet. Instead of understanding the partial interpretation of the poem, let's have the interpretation of the poem to its fullest sense. So here one word is father. The second word we are talking about returning. Return means father is coming from office or from some place. So that gives the sense, the returning, the action is going on. And home, there is a difference between home and house. What is the difference between home and house? House is temporary, whereas home is permanent. House is temporary, whereas home is permanent. Okay. So let's go through this poem and interpret it at its fullest sense. Father Returning Home is a poem composed by Dilip Chitre. He is a bilingual poet. He's a translator, a painter, a filmmaker, a columnist. So in this poem, the poet portrays a picture of suburban commuter. It is all about a story of a hardworking father who goes to work early in the morning and returns late in the evening. So, apart from the poem, I would like to talk general things. So, before the interpretation of the poem. So, talking about the general things, we can see that the father seems to be busy at work. He has so much of tensions, anxieties, financial problems, and many things. But still, he paves a way through the hurdles to which he encounters every day. So there are many people you can see that they are working in Mumbai and they stay in Pune. So it's a very long distance, but still they cover a long distance. They go to Mumbai, they do their work sincerely and return home. So what about their mentality? What about their problem? This is a simple one example that I gave you. So there are many examples, many families in which the father plays a vital role in the family. So here in this poem, the poet talks about the suburban commuter. Actually, it's a story of a hardworking father who goes to work and comes back home late in the evening. See, one thing that uh, there are many uh, fathers in the families you come across that they go so early in the morning so as to reach the office in time, and while returning home they are late. So due to their hectic schedule, they are not able to see the face of the child also in the morning and at night as well, because they are not able to meet the children or kids in the family, and he can only see the face but he can't spend his time with them. So this is actually what happens with each and every father in the family. So this is the story of the father from almost all the sectors of life, that from all the different disciplines of knowledge, from the people who are acting in the film industry, the people who are acting in serials, right? The teachers, doctors, engineers, and many. So this is the concern for those fathers who are away from their family in pursuit of a job. So in this poem, the poet depicts the father who is actually very hardworking and who goes to work early in the morning and returns late in the evening. So this leads him alienation from his family. So actually, this is a separation. This is the alienation. He gets aloof, he gets alienated, he gets separated, isolated from his family because of this schedule that he has to face. So his children to have no time to share jokes and secrets with the father. So here, naturally, the father, as the father is engaged with many works at office, he is not able to give much time to their children. He is not able to give much time to their children. He is not able to enjoy the jokes which are being cut in the family and share the secrets with the father. There are some top secrets with the kids. They always wanted to share such secrets with their father. But unfortunately, this meeting is not held. So let's see what is the theme of the poem. What exactly the poet wants to say in this poem. In this poem, the poem is very simple: father returning home. If you read it, it's very easy to understand. Tomorrow we will interpret the lines and the meaning of the poem in its depth. So here the theme of the poem is man's estrangement from a man-made world. So actually this is the world which is made by man. This is a man-made world because God has created the nature only, but man has divided the land into different countries. He divided the land into different, as you know, the states, nations, and these parts only. So we do not have a single government of the world who can monitor each and every individual on this earth. So whenever I talk about such issues in terms of globalization, which is a very important issue these days, everything is being globalized. So sometimes I feel that there are many poor people in this world and they suffer a lot in their lives. So what exactly I feel is that there should be one government in the world which needs to look after the poor in the country. The poor may be from any country, but they have to be looked after, and this issue needs to be resolved. So apart from, maybe this is a digression that I may come across, but still this is very crucial in this context. So here we are talking about how this world is man-made and what are the estrangement of men in this world. The poet uh, depicts the loneliness and world weariness of an old man in the modern society by depicting a picture of his own father and returning home from work. So actually in this poem, the father is an old man. In this poem, the father is an old man and he is busy at work. He is engrossed at work in the modern society, and the poet has vividly, realistically depicts the picture of his own father returning from home. So the father is his own father who is returning from home, and very acutely, very precisely, he has depicted the realistic picture of life. So what are his problems? What about his loneliness? What are his world weariness, anxieties, plight and predicament? So almost tired lungs and many things, dress and everything. So everything has been very nicely and beautifully portrayed by the poet Dilip Chitre in this poem. So let's focus our attention on the poetic style. What kind of style which is used by the poet while composing this poem? So the poem consists of two stanzas of 12 lines each. Means 12 lines one stanza and 12 lines another. Means 12 plus 12, 24 lines. So there are 24 lines in this poem. The poem is written in a blank verse or free verse. There is no particular meter or rhyme scheme followed. So no much attention is given for the rhyme. Much more attention is focused on the theme. It has its own thematic concern. So one more thing which is very important in understanding something about the poetic devices or the language which is used by the poet in this poem. That is, the language of the poem is very easy. Anyone can read, anyone can understand, but the interpretation of the same poem, the same object can be varied. It can be interpreted differently by different interpreters. You may say so, but the language which is used by the poet is very simple, very easy, and it has a number of symbolic manifestations held in the poetry and poetic devices used by the poet. So all these things are very important because the poem is symbolic. Each and every word is symbolic. It tells us something more. It tells us something implied sense of the meanings that is usually understood. And there are a number of poetic devices that the poet has very effectively employed in this poem in order to create its poetic effects. It is in a narrative form. The poem is presented in a narrative form, and many poetic devices which are being used in the poem are simile, alliteration, onomatopoeia, synecdoche, transferred epithet. So many poetic devices are used in this poem. Going into the toilet, the sound of the radio, trembling of his hands, clinging droplets to the graying hair. So these are some of the phrases, and these are some of the expressions which are used in the poem that actually enhance the beauty of the poem. The poem is quite very beautiful because of such phrases which are which have its poetic value and poetic beautification. So for example, going into the toilet, the sound of the radio, trembling of his hands, then clinking droplets to the graying hair. So these are a few expressions which I have mentioned here. Tomorrow I will give you a detailed analysis of this poem along with the original poem and its interpretation. So this is just the summarization of this poem. There are, apart from this, we can focus our attention on certain special features of this poem also. The poem is symbolic. The poem has its own symbolic manifestations, expressions. The poet has exactly depicts the very painful loneliness of a father through various symbolic expressions. The poem consists of two stanzas of 12 lines each that I have mentioned here. So let's focus our attention on the moral. What is the moral of this poem? Or what is the message that the poet wants to give to you? Or what are the values inculcated into the minds of the reader by the poet? So let's have the overview of all these things. The poet actually gives the message that old people are neglected in the society. So actually, nobody cares for the old. So much more focus has been made on the next generations. Man is looking front rather than looking back. So this is true that hardly we look back into the past to the parents, to the uh, usually grandparents, great grandparents. So actually, what happens? The God has given us the such a mentality that we focus on the next generations. Then again, there will be our children, and the children will focus not to you as a father. They will look forward to the next people, the next people, the next people. In this way, the past is not returning back. The past is not returning back. Actually, uh, one looks forward. One looks forward into the future rather than the past. So this is the reality of life, and no one can ignore or neglect this reality. So it's true that one should look after the parents and the grandparents and all these things. That is another issue. But here my concern is that the focus has been made to the next generations rather than the past ones. So here the deep concern of the poet in this poem is that the old people are usually neglected and they are not very much cared in the modern society. Old people are considered to be a useless being on the earth most of the times. So this modern world has no place for elder people. So the concern is that a much more importance, respect must be gained by the elderly people. So attention must be given to them. One should listen to the stories that they have already experienced and learn many lessons of life from them. This is the deep concern of this poem. So no one thinks about their loneliness or care for them. So what exactly they want us? They want to communicate with the next generations and new generations. They want to bridge the gap between the generations and carry on the mm, certain values, moral values, and inculcate some good qualities or righteous path of life among children. So in this fashion, the poem is talking about a number of uh, shades of meanings. So it is an eye-catching opening of the poem. The poem is quite interesting to learn. The pathetic condition of the father, the plight and predicament of the father have been fully focused by the poet. The treatment he receives at home is also focused. So when the father returns home, what kind of treatment is given to the father? That is important. It happens in each and every family. And what are the plights and predicaments of the father? How he is tensed, how he is shouldered by a number of in a number of responsibilities. He is not able to share with others also. There are many things. But it's very difficult to understand the father. But as far as my concern is concerned, I have my daughter whose name is Ashna, whom I love very much. It's the love between the father and a daughter. And you know that nobody has ever understood the love between the father and a daughter. It's a pure love. So every father loves his daughter, and every daughter loves her father. So this is quite interesting because there is a no word in English or anywhere which can depict exactly the relationship between the father and a mother. No pen, no word is there in this world which can exactly state the relationship between the father and a daughter. So I think, as far as my concern is, that the top priority in my life is the daughter first, then mother, then other relations, as you know that. So everyone is having different kinds of experiences. So let's see change uh, in you once you return home. So as a father, when you return home after marriage, I mean, so mother is a symbolic figure. She is a goddess. Okay. She is an epitome of sacrifice and dedication. Mother is the first teacher, and the teacher is the second mother, it is said. But I'm not talking about that issue. Here, my focus is basically on the relationship between the father and the daughter. So, when, as a married person, when you return home, uh, you attention is given to you by your daughter first. That is important. What I mean is that is the main important thing. So here, how the father is treated once he comes home, and in this poem, his solitude, loneliness have been expressed. So he attempts to overcome all these man-made problems, which are beautifully painted by the poet for the readers. So the poet has very successfully used symbolic expressions in the poem. For example, cracking sound of the radio. There are another examples as well that expresses the miserable condition of the old man. So to find some solace from this man-made world, he goes in the toilet and he contemplates them there. So see one more thing which is very exactly uh, painted by the poet, that every working man needs the space. Every working man needs privacy. Every working man needs solace, tranquility, peace, calm, the settlement of the mind once he comes from the hustle and bustle in the cities. So he wants to keep himself very happily or calmly. So once he returns home. So this thing has been very uh, precisely painted by the poet. So the feelings of an old person when he returns home from his work are much more important in this poem. So the old man is in search of peace, solace from this man-made world. So he goes into the toilet and he contemplates there. So toilet, as we say that, actually it's not good to talk about such issues like toilet and all these things. But still, this is true that in the toilet also there is a deep contemplation over the matters, and most of the major decisions are being taken in the toilet also. So here we cannot say all these things, but still there is some solace or peace of mind that we can treat it in that fashion. So it is an attempt to escape from the human contact and find solace to oneself. So what is important is the privacy. What is important is your loneliness, your alienation from the crowded world, the crowded society, and your escape from the painful uh, chain of life. So you want to get yourself detached from the family and from the responsibility and from the people, and you want to give some space to yourself, so that can be termed as privacy, that every father wants when he returns home. This is what exactly portrayed here. So it is an attempt to escape from the human contact and find solace to oneself. Overall, the poem is the best one. Please go through this poem, and that brings forth the problems of the old age people in the metro cities. So in metro cities, this problem is a major problem. So why? What is the reason of this problem? Why such problems are being created? What is the source of these problems? Who created all these problems? So that's why there are old age is a very dangerous phase in the life. So there are two types of families we can find. The first is the nuclear family, and second is a joint family. So the treatment given by the parents, the grandparents, is absolutely different in the joint family. Different in the sense that that was very useful. So all the generations are together, and the focus is on the morality, the moral stories, and all these things. But in the nuclear family, you can hardly see all these things. So everything got disrupted in the course of time. So naturally, such problems arise in the family. So that's why, and one more thing is that the parents are not very well looked after by their children, and they face many problems in their life because of this situation. So in this way, we stop here, stop our class here, and tomorrow we will interpret the poem to its fullest sense, line by line interpretation. And thank you very much. Have a nice day.